go. So Gordine and I have really been working on the stream and starting to do this seriously, and kind of made an outline for this video for the first time we're going to be doing like a real stream here. So yeah, hope you guys can hop in. And one of the things we're going to be doing is talking about my senior thesis, which focused on Chinese climate change economics. So yeah, this is a topic I know a lot about, and I've been researching it honestly for years. So yeah, we're gonna get into it, we're gonna talk about it, and it's gonna be super fun. First things first, you gotta see my drip. So I don't know.
It's hot in here.
Yeah, no, wait.
State that.
In our last stream, we talked about specifically the Arctic. So you know I had to come out with my like full-on Arctic drip. So we got this
Arctic drip.
how do you say this? How do you say this?
Nap.
Yeah, whatever.
I don't know.
This is like a brand apparently that's like specifically focused on like Arctic, and it's like super cool. And I got this hat on, hold on, that I picked up in P-Town, and I was inspired by it. Hold on. So we got like Manhattan here, we got a Manhattan there. It only cost $30, so I was like, as soon as I saw it, I was inspired. So we got a little outline here for once, all right? So
Written in a script only he can read.
yeah, this is written in hieroglyphics, as many people have told me about my handwriting. With that being said, the main focus of tonight is I wanted to get into my senior thesis, which is right here, and it's super long. It is 86 pages as it currently
We're gonna
stands.
read it front to back.
No, we're not gonna see this. I think this can be like all these sources, and I think this can be a recurring segment that we won't necessarily do it today. But I want to go into the introduction and read it, and you guys. So the introduction is about 7 pages long, and I want to read it to you guys, and it provides a good overview of what I'm going to be talking about and one of my key interests. Yeah, so let me get into a stack of books here that I really used to study this topic. And again, I was studying this like topic for probably a year before ultimately writing this thesis. So this is the first book I really used, and this is a crazy book. This is a crazy book, and I have it all marked up, so you know I'm not faking. I have this all marked up. And you actually see on the cover page, I wrote my original idea for the thesis. So it goes, how does Biden's attitude on climate change different from Trump's and Obama's with regards to China? And obviously I go into it a lot in the 85 pages, but this book is crazy. This book provides so much information. So I'm just going to provide like maybe like 3 or 4 like things I summarize, but literally every single line in this book is crazy and like really groundbreaking. So I go into it. We'll read a couple accounts. United States accounted for 15% and China accounted for 29% of total greenhouse gas emissions. And one of the things I really want to talk about is how China and the US are the 2 biggest emitters of carbon in the world. And we can go into my thesis. They provide, I don't know if, does these numbers check out? Yeah. 44% of all carbon emissions are done by China in the U.S. This book is crazy, and it's so dense. It's so dense, and literally every word of the thing. So one of the things that I really liked in this book is it succinctly demonstrates the differences between the structure of the Chinese government and the U.S. government, because obviously China is authoritarian while the U.S. is a democracy. I mean, some may say the U.S. is not a democracy, but honestly, there's actually like sites where you can check like what level of democracy each country has. But obviously, if you're asking the common American adult, they're probably going to say, oh yeah, the U.S. is a democracy for sure. But look at this, and I starred this page. I don't know if you guys can see it exactly, but this is like an exact like graphic that tells you exactly how the Chinese government is structured. So like there's like, yeah, so like, and obviously if you don't know, Xi Jinping is at the top. He like basically, long story short, in China there's like all these different like subsects of like control in the Chinese government, and basically Xi Jinping, although there's different subsects, heads all of them. So like head of the military, head of the Chinese Communist Party, head of like everything. So Xi Jinping pretty much has unilateral control of the Chinese government. So this here is like an exact makeup of like the differences between the U.S. Government structure and China's. Okay, I got many more books to show, so I've gone on long enough about this one. But if you're starting anywhere, start here. Every single word of this book is crazy. Okay. Next book is a book called The New Map by Daniel Yergin, which I talked about extensively, or not extensively, but I talked about in one of my other streams. But this book is awesome. Daniel Yergin is foundational. And actually, in this book, he goes into like not only China in the U.S., but like literally the EU, automation, Iran, like literally every facet that controls energy, climate economics, etc. He goes into it. So this would be the second book I recommend. So I'll probably talk about this book more at some point. This book is by a dude, Josh Rogan, not Joe Rogan, but he actually Joe Rogan had him on the podcast. And I have a lot of thoughts on Joe Rogan, but ultimately I think his content is good. But this book kind of goes into overarching themes about Trump's relationship with China. Like this book is very detailed and it goes into all sorts of stuff. So this book is an older book called Energy at a Crossroads by Vaclav Smil. And this is Bill Gates' favorite author. And we saw a quote in the last video where he says, like, some people look forward to the new Star Wars movies, but I look forward to the new Vaclav Smil books. So in this book, it's a little bit old, but he goes into, like, it's super dense as well. But, like, yeah, we got, like, this book is awesome. Yeah, so we got a bunch of charts. We got this book is super dense. And I didn't really utilize this directly in my thesis, but this was one of the first climate economics books I read, and it really like provided a great foundation for learning about this topic. This one is one that specifically talks about foreign policy in the EU. So basically he goes, what did Palpatine do for Coruscant's climate? Gordine, go into a 2-minute sidebar about Star Wars politics while I go take a break real quick. Okay, so that was a sidebar, which I promised we wouldn't do, or immediately, but...
That's what makes these streams fun.
Okay, so this one is specifically about the EU, and, wait, can you show just, like, this on stream? Okay, so, like, this is an example. So it says Brussels. So this guy goes into basically every major country in the EU, and I'll just show. So every chapter is about a different country in the EU. So then, like, go to like this one. Yeah, go to this one. So like now show this. So
Madrid.
Madrid, yeah. So then he goes into the politics of Spain, like he goes into literally every country. So this was another book that I actually read. And the last book I'm just going to show you before we get into the actual thesis is a book called The Rare Metal War. And this book really goes into how rare metals, which are going to be key economic resources as the climate crisis progresses, because they are instrumental in the construction of batteries and various other like economic resources. And the thing is, China controls a lot of these resources, so that's going to be key. Okay, without further ado, let's get into the thesis.
Which we are reading front to back.
No, we're not. We're starting with the intro. Okay. All right. How do we want to do this?
Are you reading this, or
I'll start it. So,
I can read it if you want.
Yeah, you want to read it, Gordon?
Yeah. So, climate change, an existential threat. Climate change is an existential threat to the survival of human civilization as we know it. For years, scientists and activists alike have been increasing awareness about the ecological, economic, and humanitarian damage that climate change might bring to the world. Science of the matter is undisputed. Climate change is anthropogenic, and the burning of fossil fuels, agricultural production, industrial manufacturing, and many other unsustainable practices are leading to an increasingly warming planet. Most of the criticism and urge for action has been aimed at world governments, and most specifically the governments that produce the greatest amounts of fossil fuels. The United States and China are the two largest emitters of greenhouse gases in the world, contributing a stunning 44% of all emissions according to the World Population Review. China and the United States together emit as much carbon as the next 37 countries combined.
That is true. All right, so read up until here, and then we're going to try something.
Yeah. If the world has any hope to stay under the 1.5 degrees Celsius, all mentions of temperature will use Celsius as the unit. Threshold of warming set by the Paris Climate Agreement, a global pact signed by nearly all world governments in 2015. The governments of the United States and China will have to significantly reduce their carbon emissions and will have to do so quickly. The relationship between the United States and China is fragile due to a wide range of foreign policy issues, including trade positions, military supremacy in the South China Sea, and various human rights disputes. But the relationship regarding climate change policy will become increasingly important and visible on the world stage as the need for action becomes more urgent, and the call for action from activists and scientists continues to ramp up. When Professor Noam Chomsky was asked for a statement on the topic of this thesis, he echoed this sentiment, saying the US and China must cooperate on climate change and other matters, or they will both be destroyed. Building off Chomsky's statement, it is ironic that the two countries currently see themselves as rivals, yet their cooperation will not only dictate the status of their own survival, but will also influence the course of society across the globe in the 21st century.
All right, and can you read this this footnote here?
World-renowned intellectual Noam Chomsky was contacted through email and provided the quote stated above. I remember that day.
I remember. Yep.
I remember you sent me a screenshot of it. A more specific follow-up question was sent to Chomsky regarding the reaction of the Chinese Communist Party to U.S. policy movements, but Chomsky stated he did not know enough about Chinese politics to make a statement on the matter.
Yeah. So Noam Chomsky, who is like one of my foundational figures, and I've actually kind of a little bit softened my love for Noam Chomsky just because he's like so anti-America. And he literally cannot find anything good about America, which I've kind of softened my love for him a little bit, but he's still foundational in my thing, in my research and love for climate change, policy, and whatever. But he is infamous or famous for responding to students' like emails. So I sent him an email, and he responded with a bunch of resources and like. Literally, Noam Chomsky responded to my email, and someday maybe we can pull up that email exactly. But yeah, and one thing Chomsky said is like he likes to respond to these emails because he finds them inspiring, and because like the people who are emailing him are people who care about the issues and people who want to make a change. So the fact that Noam Chomsky says that about people and is willing to respond to probably the thousands of emails he gets is like really inspiring. But what we're going to try here is that one thing that I want to try is plugging this into ChatGPT and providing a succinct analysis of this. So this is one thing that I tried to do, and I've been helping. Well, I'd like to help companies leverage using ChatGPT for educational resources. So say, can you provide a succinct bullet point analysis of this scientific article or whatever?
Succinct bullet points. Succinct bullet point analysis of what?
Of this of the following. Of the following, sure.
Let's see what we get.
Yeah, let's see what we get. Okay, can you read that?
Okay. So you heard what we just read, so you'll be able to judge for yourself how accurate this is. Climate change poses an existential threat to human civilizations with ecological, economic, and humanitarian consequences. Scientific consensus confirms that climate change is primarily caused by human activities, including the burning of fossil fuels, agricultural practices, and industrial manufacturing. Governments, particularly those with fossil fuel production, such as the United States and China, have received criticism for their high greenhouse gas emissions. The United States and China collectively account for 44% of global greenhouse gas emissions, equivalent to the emissions of the next 37 countries combined. To limit global warming to the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold set by the Paris Climate Agreement, both the United States and China need to substantially reduce their carbon emissions quickly. The relationship between the United States and China is complex due to various foreign policy issues, but their cooperation on climate change is crucial for their own survival and will impact the global trajectory in the 21st century. Professor Noam Chomsky emphasized the necessity of U.S.-China cooperation on climate change and other matters, warning that failure to do so could result in destruction for both countries.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
Yeah, and the thing is, try this command. Type in explain this scientific article to a first grader in a way a fifth grader would understand.
Explain those
words.
Explain those concepts in
a level a fifth grader wouldn't understand.
Concepts in a way that a I think
elementary
that an elementary school student.
Yeah. So I actually haven't tried this, so I'm interested to see this. Perfect.
This is perfect.
A smart person, dude, that is crazy that it can do this.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, this isn't perfect, obviously, but this climate change means that the Earth's temperature is getting hotter because of things people do. Sure. Like using too much energy from fossil fuels and doing activities that harm the environment. Sure. This is a big problem because it can cause a lot of damage to nature, our money, and the people who live on Earth. Sure. Some countries like the United States and China produce a lot of the pollution that makes the Earth hotter. They need to make changes to reduce the pollution they create. If they don't, the Earth will keep getting hotter, and that's not good for anyone. The United States and China are important because they have a big influence on the world, even though they might not always agree. It's really important for them to work together to solve the problem of climate change. If they don't, it could be bad for both of them and for everyone else too. A smart person named Professor Nowakowski said that the United States and China should cooperate on climate change and other important things, or else they could both be destroyed. It's kind of funny because even though they think of themselves as rivals, they need to help each other if they want to survive. And if they work together, they can help make the world a better place for everybody.
So when we're going into the economic analysis we're about to embark on here, do we have stuff in the chat?
Yeah, we got a great message here.
Yeah, exactly. Can you read that?
Yeah, I can't wait to see the implications generative AI has on K through 12 education.
Yeah, exactly. And that is something that I found that not a lot of people are doing or aware of. Mm-hmm. So in these streams, I'd like to try to appeal to like young audiences.
Like, also, this doesn't just if I didn't say I have a bachelor's in physics, I've used that same concept on like high level, like quantum mechanics.
Yeah, exactly.
It works. Sometimes it has trouble with like the really high level stuff, but it does pretty well.
Hold on, can we go back to ChatGPT?
You can use that on
yeah, so I'm gonna be using so yeah, an example. So I use ChatGPT every single day. And
quantum effects near the event horizon.
Oh, should we see that?
That's exactly
yeah, so Gerdine and I like to talk shop about quantum mechanics a lot. So tell me, wait, no, this is actually what is this?
Why did it give it
no, we used it
for... We did something. Hold on. Simplify the... Oh, yeah, we must have just plugged in... Oh, this was when we were talking about Stephen Hawking.
Yeah,
we were talking about Hawking.
Might as well read this.
Essentially, we just plugged in something about Stephen Hawking and his work on black holes and Hawking radiation, and just asked it to simplify it, and it did a good job. Then we asked it to simplify it in like a specific amount of characters, but it did a good job of succinctly. I'm not gonna.
And one thing I want to do, and one of my goals, is to bring climate education to young people, and like honestly, like really like elementary school students. And this tool is going to really like help me be able to do that, and hopefully I can teach. Well, this is like super ambitious at this point, but teach other educators how to do it. Can I say this again?
Mm-hmm.
So
it's when you understand the prompt writing process and the things that you can do with it, it makes it very easy to leverage and in sometimes ways you don't even think of.
Yeah. So I actually want to show you guys something that I do for one of the organizations I work for, Barnstable Clean Water, and I'll show you like something that I would do for like an actual company. Okay. So basically they handed me a stack of papers, and they wanted me to produce. So back before ChatGPT, ChatGPT came out in November 2022. I became aware of it, honestly, probably right away, but I didn't know how to use it. So back in like October, they were asking me to produce these analyses of this kind of stuff, and it would probably take me 5 hours, or probably take me 3 hours to make a really good one. So when I introduced them and said, hey, can I try this new technology to kind of streamline this process? We don't have to read all this, but basically it produced perfect and succinct analyses of these topics, of these topics, like right away. Like, read this. So like, no, read this. So like, this is like, I plugged in like and this would be
let's see what you asked first. So what you asked it to do was to summarize this scholarly article utilizing bullet points. And then it took all of this and shrunk it down into 6 bullet points.
Mm-hmm.
Survival rates of cedar were similar among plant types, but differed among.
Yeah, and American white cedar is something that Barnstable Clean Water focuses on a lot because it is essentially
Now,
good for the
as somebody who's
ecosystem.
probably
Yeah.
I'm assuming you read the whole thing, right? So,
Yeah.
Like, give this a grade. How well did this summarize?
Perfectly. 100,
Perfectly?
100 on 100.
There you go.
Yeah.
And when you think of the amount of time that saves, and you think of the possibilities for improving workflow, especially in scientific settings where, anybody in the STEM field will tell you a lot of these scientific papers, they're exceedingly wordy, they're exceedingly detailed. There's a lot of, I don't want to say fluff language, but there's just a lot of just boilerplate language in there. So being able to do this in a timely fashion to summarize and get the main points is so worth it and so just important.
And obviously, people know a lot about AI in general. And I'm sure there are people aware and are doing this, but in the circles I've been in, specifically on the Cape in the world of environmentalism, it seems like this is kind of a new technology.
So for the physics lab that I work for as well, nobody uses this.
Yeah, so I really want to, especially, I'm trying to reach a young audience. So these will definitely be tools that if I do continue with this, and I'd really like to, and we're getting better at it, and I hope to, see, this is I guess too ambitious at this point, but go to schools and be able to teach climate change in this way and do streams that appeal to a younger audience that teach climate change in this way. That being said, where were we in terms of we were talking about my thesis, right?
Do you want to move on from that, or do you want to?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, we'll talk about this much more on these streams. In terms of this, one of my big interests in this is honestly a recent interest is leveraging digital marketing in Twitch and YouTube, etc., to be able to expand these topics. But at this time, when I wrote this thesis, I was considering more traditional foreign policy analysis and economic analysis. So at this time, I was really trying to work on my writing and analysis skills. So yeah, and now I honestly think that I'm able to going to be able to leverage it to a younger audience, because again, obviously a student could not understand, a fifth grader would not pick up any of this. Mm-hmm. But can we continue on?
And also, have you ever been asked to if you're explaining something complicated to somebody, they're kind you dumb it down a little bit? Sometimes it's hard to do that yourself.
Yeah.
So even just having a conversation with somebody and quickly doing simplifying this for me in ChatGPT, just being able to give them a answer that they're satisfied with and that they can digest is great right there. The relationship between China and the United States has been long debated and monitored by academics and politicians alike since the Nixon administration opened up foreign relations with the Asian country in the early 1970s. The relationship evolved further after China joined the World Trade Organization and the country continued to become integrated into the global economy. Since that point, China's economy and global influence have grown tremendously, and it now sits as the world's next
hegemonic.
However, this meteoric rise to power did not come without trade-offs. Since 2000, China's per capita emissions of carbon dioxide have increased by a factor of 2.7. China's per capita emissions of carbon dioxide have increased by a factor of 2.7, and its annual share of greenhouse gas emissions increased from 13.6% in 2000 to 31% in 2020. I've used, I'm in a minority here, I guess. In the process of building an economy that rivals that of the United States, China also came to match and eventually far surpass the United States on gross greenhouse gas emissions, although the United States still leads on a per capita basis. Together, these two powers make up a staggering 44.2% of the world's total emissions. For reference, the next closest country in terms of annual share of emissions is India, accounting for just over 7%.
And actually, we're going to get into an article that goes into the relationship between China and India, which is fascinating and honestly something I have not read enough about. So we're going to learn ourselves here.
I'm going to speed up by about 7 or 8%. The entire European Union contributes less than 7% of total greenhouse gas emissions. It is clear that China and the United States will be the most important players as the global community strives toward carbon neutrality and attempts to reach the goal set by the Paris Agreement. The bilateral relationship between these two countries will dictate what this transition will look like, and perhaps more importantly, what the timetable will be. However, while it may be easy to say, why can't President Biden use the full power of the presidency to combat climate change? And if climate change is such an important and well-established problem, why can't the United States and China come together and find ways to solve this essential problem? While scientists and activists wish that this was possible, a complex web of factors make the problem of climate change mitigation a near impossible knot to untangle. Biden must deal with the United States political system itself as obstructionist members of Congress threaten his entire agenda and force him to frame his platform in ways that reflect what legislation is most passable instead of what legislation is most effective. In the United States, the science of climate change itself is doubted by citizens and politicians alike, which forces the administration to pass what is popular, not what will have the greatest effect on climate mitigation. Biden's grappling with this complex system has forced his climate agenda to stall and will force him to reevaluate other offers that will enable him to take serious action on climate mitigation. Biden must also deal with the actions and attitudes of his predecessors. As the vice president under the Barack Obama administration, the stances and decisions made by President Obama and climate change are beliefs Biden still holds and seeks to continue. However, his immediate predecessor, Donald Trump, complicated things immensely. While Trump threw a wrench into a variety of different issues, he left Biden in a particularly difficult position on the climate front by removing the United States from a position of leadership in the world on climate change issues and wasting crucial years with climate inaction. Had Trump engaged more proactively, it could have massively helped Biden to put the
All right,
United
can we
States
take a breath here because this is dense.
on track to reach Paris targets.
But I do want to finish this because the main point of this stream was to talk about my research at Fordham. And again, I was in a program called the Fordham Honors Program, where we extensively studied liberal arts, which kind of gave me a foundation in like arts, literature, cinema, honestly, and like a bunch of different things. And I'd really like to talk about that in other streams, so we already have talked about that in other streams as well. And yeah, and I'm honestly really excited to go into these other things I have pulled up. And honestly,
Me too.
at this point, I think most of this stream should focus on China, and then maybe we'll do a little bit of philosophy at the end. How does that sound?
No, none of the directors you were talking about.
The what?
You said no, because you sent me an outline that said China, philosophers, and then talking about the best directors since the 70s.
I mean, we gotta talk.
I had a massive list of them too.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we could stream for 6 hours. Who knows? All right, we took a breath here. Let's continue.
Where did I stop? Oh yeah. Also, the current state of the United States-China relationship is a crucial factor to consider when evaluating the actions Biden is attempting to take to facilitate cooperation with China on climate issues. This relationship is fragile as the two countries take vastly different stances on many key issues, and tensions continue to rise as China's influence in the world order grows. The actions of Biden's immediate predecessors are also irrelevant on the topic of China, as Obama's vision of cooperation with China became starkly contrasted with the way Trump increased tensions between the two countries with his incendiary actions and rhetoric. Biden built on Trump's new status quo, which makes things more complicated as they need to cooperate on climate.
And I got an idea. How about after every paragraph, we take a breath and like kind of tie this back in.
Yeah,
So I'd this is something that kind of like gives me, I guess, clout in terms of like this industry, that I've done research like this in a more traditional sense, and I've shared this with people, so it gives me a little bit of clout to be able to kind of like leverage my interest in digital media and appealing to a younger audience. And this is something that I brought up again. I'm going to reiterate, when I talked to the literal billionaire, the FSG guy, who knows a ton about climate. He had not heard of leveraging AI and specifically Twitch to reach a younger audience. So yeah. So how about after every paragraph or two, we take a breath? But continue, please, if you don't mind.
You've never heard of Twitch, wow.
He had heard of it, but he definitely did not. Definitely had not heard about how it was used to leverage news.
That's what he wants you to think. He's probably a Pokemon tier 3, so. All right. Simultaneously, China does not sit still. The Chinese Communist Party and President Xi Jinping have their own foreign policy agendas and planned action on climate change. President Xi's near unilateral influence over policy decisions puts China in a very different position when taking climate action as compared to the United States. Additionally, China's role as a rising power that seeks to surpass the United States' global influence will affect how the country plays its hand in matters of both climate and foreign policy. It is a given that Biden and the United States are reacting to the actions of China, and the opposing Asian superpower will be making adjustments of its own.
Okay, my next, I guess, breath is that if you see this book that I talked about, that I said, if you're going to start anywhere, start with this one. Like, obviously I'm not plagiarizing it, but like my knowledge of this topic really, really stemmed from this book. And honestly, this book, the Josh Rogan book I talked about, where he basically talks about the internal dealings of Trump vis-a-vis China. So, go on.
Okay.
We're kind of almost done.
Yes. Wait, how much? Yeah.
And did we have any questions in the chat?
Another few. Nope, doesn't look like it. Not
Come
so
on,
far.
chat. Come on, you guys.
I've asked you about all
You guys are being lame right now. Come on.
It's because we have no emotes enabled. I gotta enable some emotes. They're gonna be omega lowering this. All right. Biden's actions on climate do not take place in a vacuum. It must exist in the context of the aforementioned factors. While it would make sense for Biden to treat climate as an independent issue, considering the stakes for the environment and society, it is clear that he will not be able to take this path and will weigh a variety of factors when considering his next steps. Despite this reality, there are some policies and areas of cooperation with China that are feasible for the Biden administration that must be considered. After the political and geopolitical context is laid out, some policies that Biden could realistically enact will be considered below, including cooperation on the advancement of green technology, good faith trade relations on goods that will assist climate mitigation, and promotion of other climate tech companies that will spur outside Chinese investment.
Yeah, I'm texting somebody, so just keep going.
Fraud. You said every paragraph. All right. Well, it seems as though Biden will follow in the footsteps of his predecessor and attempt to take a hard line on China. The question remains, can the Biden administration reverse the course of the Trump administration and cooperate with China on this issue, and together, as the two largest emitters, lead the world through the climate crisis by implementing policies with tangible effects? Or will the Biden administration forego climate action for other objectives and fail to act with the urgent and all-encompassing action that this problem requires?
Okay, so here's a point I want to make. One of the things that when I was working with these various professors at Fordham, they say, like, one of your big things in working with your thesis is that you'll never be satisfied. So I kind of like this topic is so complex and like there's so much about it that I was like never satisfied. And like I wanted to add more. So actually this paragraph right here is a paragraph that I actually wrote yesterday because I had come to discover or like come to be aware of this new information. So this is actually interesting. This is like the closer to my introduction that I wrote today or like wrote yesterday.
Nice.
Go on.
Messaging will be key for the Biden administration to achieve their stated goals.
So this is like I wrote this a year ago. So this is my attempt. This is my like with my knowledge now, and I've gained a lot of knowledge since then. So this is my new. This is like this is an example of my like analysis and I guess writing now. Okay, go on.
All right. Messaging will be key for the Biden administration to achieve their stated goals. In the words of renowned climate activist Bill McKibben, who literally wrote the book on climate activism with his book The End of Nature in the late 80s. McKibben provides the rules of thumb that warm areas get warmer and the wet areas get wetter. This description of climate change runs contrary to the framing of climate change as simply global warming, which was popularized throughout the initial focus on climate activism, especially with former Vice President Al Gore's famous documentary An Inconvenient Truth. The messaging of climate change is simply a phenomenon that simply warming the planet is limiting. It emphasizes the point that climate must be messaged as the changes that climate change affects are not only warming the planet, or not warming that affects the planet.
I literally did this thing, so there could be typos.
But it's rather a complex set of effects, yeah, I can see, that comprises a wide range.
Wait,
changes.
is that supposed to be effects?
Yeah, and a wide range changes. I can tell you what this is. It's fine, whatever.
Might as well change it now to E. I mean, obviously in terms of like talking about economic.
You're in.
Oh, whatever. Yeah, and obviously in talks about this topic, you have to know the difference between effects and affects. Actually,
I'd say so.
Hold on, could we go to ChatGPT for a second? Explain to an elementary school student the difference between affect and effect. Because
I don't think you need ChatGPT for that.
Well, no. Because this is something I really struggled on, especially like learning like in 7th grade when we were like first learning that. I like couldn't grasp it.
Maybe I'll say like, what is an easy way to remember? To remember the. Oh, Jesus, I can't type right now. This keyboard is horrific. That's not my type. What is an easy way to remember the difference between effects and effects?
Yeah, so if you don't know this, honestly, there might be people in the chat that don't know this, so this is important.
Speak up, chat. Who doesn't know it?
And this is too complex. So I want you to explain it to a first grader. Say first grader.
Simplify this definition
in a way a first grader would understand.
In a way that a first grader would understand.
I'm interested to see what it says.
Sure. Oh. This is how I remember it. Remember, effects are what happens because of something, and effects are how something changes or influences.
Honestly, like a first grader cannot understand that. But honestly, in this in this scenario, I don't think there's any easy way to explain.
A first grade teacher doesn't even care if you get that. Like,
yeah, I mean, and I remember when we first learned about this in 7th grade. So like, yeah, where were we? Thesis.
I was almost finished.
Yeah.
But is rather a complex set of effects that comprises a wide range. I'll just fix it as well, of changes that will be inflicted on the global ecosystem. This framing of global warming as a one-dimensional system of warming hurts the messaging of climate activists and is often used by climate deniers and gives ammo to climate-denying figures who discredit climate as a hoax put together by climate alarmists. This emphasis on proper messaging must be acted upon by leaders if any sort of legitimate climate action can be acted upon by the U.S. leaders.
All right, so let's take a breather on the thesis, and we'll go into some scientific.
Oh, Teddy said we actually had a heated debate about this on stream the other day. On what specific? On climate? Because that's interesting.
Yeah, I'd get in there and
Because you have a lot of.
I'd get in there and I'd body them, like, because I know all the talking. So like,
you have mostly foreign viewers, so
yeah. So when, like, one of the things I've learned and like learning about climate is that the evidence is so unequivocal and it's like so.
Nick says, "Well, I'll go bust out ChatGPT for the most mundane of tasks."
No, I'm literally. I'm trying to.
Oh, effect and effect. I knew you guys weren't having a climate. I don't know why. I thought too highly of you. Effect and effect.
Wait, he called me Longoat? That's funny. Wait, no, that's my brother.
Yes.
That is my. I thought it was Nick Hoff, but yeah. My brother's in here in the chat. Nick, throw us a history book recommendation you haven't heard of if you're still watching.
Let's ask cheap. No.
Okay, let's take a breather and get into some of the articles we were looking at.
Yes, good idea.
Let's honestly start with the Woodwell one, which is here.
At the very end. Climate change.
Okay, this is something I should learn more about, and this is going to be absolutely fascinating. Let's go.
Climate change will worsen the India-China rivalry, but there's a better way forward. Written 2 years ago.
2 years ago? That's outdated.
Wow, that was some article.
Wait, does it not say anything?
No, I think it's just, I just have to go in.
The Diplomat?
Yeah. Oh, this is an article, all right. Oh, actually, it's not that long. It's like half page. All right.
So this is an example of content I really want to do, and it's something Hassan does. Or honestly, Hassan doesn't do like really comprehensive economic analysis like this. And I can't remember if I've said this before.
No, he just argues with his chat.
But I'd like imagine if I had like the writer, like not like the writers of this paper or like legit climate experts on here breaking down content in this style. So let's go.
And then you got $100 million kick deal. All right. A recent study shows the risk climate change poses to China-India relations, but also how the two powers can cooperate to mitigate the impact. How could the worsening climate crisis affect the sharpening security rivalry between nuclear powers India and China? The answer is also a warning. Climate change is likely to magnify bilateral tensions on the harsh border and shared basins of the Brahmaputra, Yarlung, Tsangpo, and the Indus River. Yeah, I know all those places. Pushing the two rivals toward conditions ripe for conflict. But the climate security challenge can also be a pathway for cooperation. Should the two nations seize the opportunity, the international community should heed this moment and play a discreet and supportive role in this process.
So that point they make is that there's opportunity for cooperation and mutual benefit for both countries is something that I heavily focus on in the thesis. So let's continue.
Yeah.
And honestly, one of the things here is you see how they have these hot links here. So in a way I want to engage or like facilitate this content in the future, and I'll get better at, or we'll get better at it, is to like go to these hot links and do sidebars that don't disrupt the flow of the stream.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, like this right here. You can become a Taiwan fellowship right here. Apply now.
Oh, we love Taiwan in this household. Yes. We can talk about Taiwan. Honestly, we should talk about Taiwan.
We're going to apply for Taiwan fellowship later in the stream. All right, this is the upshot of our recent climate security study, which is right here. The study and the accompanying story map is a production of a collaboration between two U.S.-based research institutions, the Council on Strategic Risks and the Woodwell Climate Research Center. A distinguishing feature of this work is the cross-disciplinary nature of the team that produced it. Security analysts and climate scientists, respectively, from our two organizations worked closely together from the outset.
And
that's interesting, security analysts.
And I'll just put this out there. Woodwell Climate Research Center is one of the top climate think tanks in the world. It's on Cape Cod. It's in Falmouth, and I would love.
Oh, we got a history book recommendation.
Oh, here we go.
History book recommendation of the day is The Return of Martin Guerre. Man convinces entire French town, including friends, family, and wife, that he is a completely different person in order to inherit his land. True story. That sounds insane.
Yeah, Nick, if you have any recommendations on World War II or Revolutionary or Civil War history, throw those two, because I mean,
or Bridgewater Triangle myth books.
Oh, All right, let's get back into the Woodwell study.
Projecting climate change impacts until 2040, our study finds increased chances of floods on the Brahmaputra River in northeastern India, particularly in the months of July and September. The increase will primarily be driven by more intense spells of rainfall. Millions in the region already endure perennial floods, and our projections portend enhanced such material, i.e. physical risk. That is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's already such a wet region anyway.
Yep. And again, Bill McKibben says dry areas get drier, wet areas get wetter.
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, I'll do a 30-second sidebar on the potential refugee crisis that will be caused by dry areas getting drier. So if you think about the Syrian refugee crisis that happened in the early 2010s, where Syrian refugees left Syria, I think it was like in the low millions. I think it was like only 1 million. Because of the Syrian civil war with Assad and other like militant groups who flooded into the European Union, and it caused complete destabilization and xenophobic attitudes in the EU, and that was only 1 million people. And climate scientists forecast that the amount of climate refugees could be in the billions, and that is one of the biggest effects I don't think people realize, and that is like okay and I talk about that in the thesis. That could be the biggest effect of climate change that could immediately, or like in the near future, affect the world, and that is going to be bad. Yeah. Okay, let's continue.
A little beacon of light in that is we have a message from Thurbinator here that says you're hot. Which are you referring to? And be careful which you answer because moderator status could be hanging in the balance.
Yeah. Honestly, we're looking for mods. If you guys are participating,
I mean, pretty much everybody in here could get a mod.
Yeah, honestly, we'll mod everybody. And
I'll do that later.
And a mod is somebody who can control the chat and rein in the chat, if you know what I mean.
And have unmitigated power.
So basically, all the people in the chat right now are people I know personally. And I'd really love to get some people in here who I don't know personally, and I think the more that we produce this content and get better at it, we'll be able to do that.
We're thinking of advertising on Craigslist, but...
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. So China's dam building activities could further amplify these risks. If the massive 60 gigawatt dam project on the Great Bend of the River moves forward, as announced recently by China, it will likely be built with substantial storage capacity. This will dramatically reduce stream flow during dam filling, a process that could take months. Additionally, the region of the Yarlung Tsangpo's Great Bend is known to be earthquake prone, presenting the risk of dam fracture and sudden water release in case of a major seismic event. That would not be good.
That would not be good.
China is also building dams on the Indus River in Pakistani-held Kashmir. Great song by Led Zeppelin. Territory that India claims, and over which 3 or 4 India-Pakistan wars have been fought. Very true. These dams are part of Beijing's Belt and Road.
Belt and Road. Okay, we have to do. Initiative. I talk extensively about
which India has opposed.
I talk extensively about the Belt and Road Initiative in my thesis because it's this massive infrastructure project that the Chinese government is engaged in to rival the World Trade Organization, who has poured the WTO has poured billions into like developing countries to try to gain influence, and this is the project that China is trying to do that rivals that. And a thing I talk about in the thesis, how if the Belt and Road Initiative, although they message it as being very climate friendly, in reality it's really not. So if and I talk about this thing called debt for climate swaps, which is, I actually say it's the most highly recommended thing I talk about in this thesis, would essentially be, instead of paying off the WTO and like you're in like traditional payments, you could basically use your debt to invest in your own energy security infrastructure. Let's keep going with this.
I also just want to bring up a great quote that was just mentioned. When everyone is a mod, no one will be.
That's good. Syndrome. We can talk about Pixar at some point, and WALL-E is my favorite Pixar movie. And my favorite thing about WALL-E is that there's no human dialogue in the first 40 minutes of the film.
Syndrome also might have the worst hairdo in Pixar history.
And another thing I quote from The Incredibles all the time is when he says, when the AI says, "Mr. Incredible, would you like some more mimosa?"
I probably quote the most. I go, Edna mode.
Mm-hmm. Pull yourself together! You Elastigirl!
You Elastigirl! Alright, the study finds the glacier melt due to climate change is
in the Arctic, which I'm trying to leverage into a job as the Arctic communication strategist at Woodwell. Spoiler alert. Go on. Sorry.
The study finds that glacier melt due to climate change is likely to increase stream flow above current levels in the Indus River for the next several decades, making these dam projects viable for the long term. The success of these projects could further cement the already strong Chinese-Pakistani partnership, further entrenching the China-India rivalry. Enjoying this article? Click here to subscribe for full access. Just $5 a month.
No.
Are you sure?
Honestly, maybe well,
What do you mean maybe?
I mean, this is a pretty good public.
$5 a month?
Yeah, no, surely not.
While material risks from climate change and proposed dams are clear, equally of concern are the dangers of misperception. We argue that enhanced floods in downstream India due to climate change could lead to Indian suspicions of deliberate Chinese water manipulation. That would be
all right. I got a question for everybody in the chat. I want everybody in the chat to answer this.
What is your shoe size?
If you guys are probably not as up on climate issues as like me or even Gordine,
You gonna take that, chat?
Are you guys able to understand this analysis and form of communication that this style of economic analysis is written in? Can we have some people in the chat answer that, because I'm legitimately interested.
I think they're fine.
No, yeah, I just want to know, but yeah.
I don't know about Teddy, but
I mean, yeah, and all these guys in here are super smart and like are legit, like, yeah. I mean, they're from the South Shore of Massachusetts.
I'll start talking in emotes.
They're from the South Shore of Massachusetts, and we're in the Massachusetts public education system, so they're all wicked smart.
And they know lots about Bridgewater Triangle lore.
Yeah. Okay. Honestly, I think we've heard enough of this article, but it's very, very good, obviously. But
there's literally like
okay, might as well finish it then.
Where did I stop? The report also examines the impact of climate change on the physical terrain of the contested border areas where altitudes and temperatures are harsh, particularly on the western border of Ladakh. The study projects a strong warming trend overall, with significant reduction of extreme wind chill days in high elevation regions on the western border by 2040. This warming will provide more opportunities for troop patrols on both sides, and therefore potentially more clashes if tensions remain high. Troops also face enhanced risks of glacial lake outbursts. This is crazy that they're talking about, extreme wind chills and western border by 2040, right about the time we'll be seeing the
Avatar film. Something we're always going to talk about is that the smallest effects, and obviously they might not be the smallest effects, but things like sea level, like Arctic and Antarctic ice sheets melting can have like drastic effects that you wouldn't even think of, and these are being detailed right here. Of like, the thing about climate change is like every article you read about it, you're like hearing about more and more bad news, and that's why it's like people think that it's like, people don't grasp how big of a thing this is going to be. Like it's really, really, really crazy. So let's finish up this article, and then we're gonna plug it in the ChatGPT.
Right, I'm just gonna finish it straight up. All right. It is clear that climate change is no friend of de-escalation between India and China, but there is a lot that can be done to reverse this slide. At a practical level, there is scope for greater data diplomacy, ensuring the measurement and exchange of more granular river flow data between the rivals. Easy enough. Early warning systems in the border region could help both sides respond to increasing natural disasters. The existing dialogue between the two militaries could benefit from including environmental security concerns. The two sides could set up joint emergency response procedures whose actualization will prove that collaboration is possible and beneficial. Transparency is another key area for improvement. Beijing has a history of opaqueness when it comes to hydropower projects on transboundary rivers, as evidenced by the Mekong River Basin experience in Southeast Asia, and this needs addressing.
All right, before you finish, you see how they say Beijing has a history? This is something that's used in like foreign policy and economic analysis a lot of the times, is like when they're referring to a country, they will refer to the capital. So like when they're talking about China and they call it Beijing, so it's like Beijing is doing this, Washington is doing that, Madrid is doing this. And that's something we saw in the European Union book. And I love calling like Washington is doing this.
Wherever it's headquartered. It's like the same thing when they refer to the CIA's Langley sometimes, you know what I mean?
Yeah. All right, let's finish this.
All right. As the upstream actor, China will need to make the first move, but India will also have to respond. The international community can support this process unobtrusively with technical assistance if desired by the parties, but also with encouragement for environmental confidence building. The grand prize, admittedly an aspirational goal, would be a comprehensive river basin management treaty involving all relevant riparian states for the Brahmaputra and the Indus. Melting mountains, mounting tensions aims to address only one piece of the overall puzzle of tracking and forecasting the multifaceted India-China rivalry. It, however, shows the value of a cross-disciplinary approach to preparing for the complex geopolitical risks of the future and climate-threatened Asia and elsewhere. Now, what I got from that is everybody should just try to get along, and things would be better. In other news, you could get 40% off when you pay with Discover Rewards, up to $50 off, limited time offer, see terms. And once again, we will be applying for Taiwan Fellowship later. So that's the end of this. That's the end of this article.
That was fantastic. No surprise that Woodwell's producing cutting edge climate analysis. All right, let's plug this into the chat bot and see how it summarizes it.
Sure. Summarize the following for me in such a way that I'm gonna say.
All right, we'll do a undergraduate environmental science major, and then do yeah, this is interesting. Okay, do it. Okay, how about this? That a way summarize the following in a way a PhD, a climate scientist PhD would understand, a undergraduate would understand, a fourth grader would understand, and a first grader would understand, and put these analyses side by side, and then say these summaries do not have to be extensive.
Okay.
So I'm making Gordine type. Gordine's my indent.
I cannot stress enough.
I'm not going to say that. What?
What?
Never mind.
I cannot stress how terrible this keyboard is. A climate science PhD would understand. An undergraduate climate scientist student would understand. And a fourth grader would understand.
Say put
yes. I got it. Trust me. Keep each separate by a few lines.
And say tell it.
Yes.
No. I want you to also tell it. Explain how these analyses different.
You can ask that out. You ask that out. That's better than asking out. You don't want to overload them.
Yep.
Keep each separated by a few lines.
I'm actually wondering.
Show us the keyboard, dude. Look at this piece of garbage. It's like it came in like a pack of like a mouse, a keyboard, and a headset, and it literally. I feel like if I type too hard, I'm gonna break it.
Can you believe this technology that is able to do that? Like this is crazy, and the fact that people aren't utilizing this is crazy. Like, what are we doing?
I forgot to add the
we'll do it next.
I forgot to add the article.
The who?
I forgot to add the article. It summarized the climate science.
All right, yeah. Do the same command.
Oh wait, no, hold on. I got rid of the thing.
And I'm honestly gonna put back on this Manhattan hat because it's too fire not to be wearing. Honestly.
Yeah, inside.
And honestly, yeah, never mind.
Well, it's hot. All right. Where's this one? Where you at? There you are. There we go. All right. This might take.
Yeah, this might take a while. He's really thinking. All right. Could you?
Yeah, climate science PhD. I mean, this is a bit short for PhD, but the worsening climate crisis has the potential to escalate the security rivalry between nuclear powers India and China. The impact of climate change, such as increasing flooding and glacial melt, can exacerbate tensions in shared river basins and border regions, creating conditions that could lead to conflict. However, there is also an opportunity for cooperation if both nations seize it. The international community should play a supportive role in this process. That just in and of itself, regardless of climate change PhD, I think that was just a fantastic summary. Now let's see if it gets dumbed down. Climate change can make the rivalry between India and China more intense. It may cause more flooding and glacial melt, which could make the situation on the shared rivers and border areas worse. This could increase the chances of conflict, but if both countries work together, they can find solutions and cooperate. Other countries should support this process to help reduce the risks. Also pretty good.
Now can you have...
Fourth grader, hold on. The climate crisis could make India and China fight more. The changing weather might make floods and melting glaciers happen. This could make things worse between them and maybe even cause a big fight. But if they decide to work together and find solutions, things can get better.
Right.
Other countries should help with this so they don't fight.
Now can you ask it what style of language and rhetorical strategies did you use to differentiate these different levels of understanding by the person you were trying to educate? Do you get all that?
Why do you care about the algorithmic structure?
Because I want to see.
What? Say it again. Just I'll
Alright,
say it again.
Okay, I gotta remember it. What differences in rhetorical strategies
In rhetorical strategies.
did you use to convey these topics to different levels, to people with different levels of understanding of the source material?
And it's gonna be like I didn't use big words.
No, I mean, well,
Different levels in understanding of the source material. I hate this keyboard of the source material. It's just that the key height is so weird. For climate scientist PhD, use technical terms and scientific language appropriate for an expert audience, including specific details and data. Emphasize the need for collaboration and the role of the international community. For undergraduate climate scientists, simplify the language and avoid excessive technical jargon. Provide a
you
clear
telling me they wouldn't want to see this? This is great.
Sure. Provide a clear explanations of causes and effects of climate change. Focus on the importance of cooperation. For the fourth grade, I used very simple and accessible language suitable for young child. Focus on conveying the basic concepts. I don't know if I'm saying I don't know if I needed this spelled out for me. I was able to.
I think people who want to educate young people.
Teddy, tell me what you thought about that. All right. By adjusting the levels of complexity,
this is great content.
incorporating
This is great
and
content.
omitting technical terms, and presenting. Can we apply for a Taiwanese fellowship now? Presenting information in a concise and understandable.
I do love Taiwan. I do. Well, I like China, but I love
understanding the
Taiwan.
main points and implications of the
Yo, can we look at? Never mind. All right, what do we want to do next?
topic.
Oh, could we go to
BK.
Could we go to the book Windfall up there? Okay. So this is a book by someone named Megan O'Sullivan, who actually one of my mom's best friends from Holy Cross. It's her sister. And could we go to Megan O'Sullivan's wiki? Because she's got a wiki.
Wow. Martha Stewart.
So Megan O'Sullivan was a national security advisor under George Bush, and she's actually a big oil person, which, you know.
Is she actually?
Yeah, and I'm listening to her audiobook right now, but I'm potentially going to have a meeting with her to talk about these topics. Yeah, no, she's one of the smartest people, like, probably in the world. Like, she's 0.0001% of smart people. But this
I would
book,
debate me on course on politics any day.
yeah, but I don't know. Can you go back and we can look at a little bit about her book? But honestly, Daniel Yergin, The New Map, was that book I was talking about. This book came out before, and I think that Daniel Yergin might owe her a little bit of money because he basically copies a lot of what she says.
I'll
But
wait.
this is a fantastic
Daniel
book.
Jurgens' The Quest.
Oh, yeah. Well, she's obviously influenced by him.
What was I gonna say? I have to read this like a review. Windfall is the boldest profile of the world's energy resources since Daniel Jurgens' The Quest, asserting that the new energy abundance due to oil and gas resources once deemed too expensive is transforming the geopolitical order and is boosting American power. Riveting and comprehensive, a smart, deeply researched primer on the subject.
Nice. All right. Want to go to Megan O'Sullivan's wiki?
Sure, we can get out of here. So.
And so she's a teacher at Harvard Kennedy School, which, spoiler alert, I want to go to.
Grew up in Lexington. What a rich town.
I'm going to say that spoiler alert louder. Harvard Kennedy School, I want to go to.
Officially, the John F. Kennedy School of Government. Is the board member at the Belfer Center for
At
Science.
Raytheon. Actually, we got to get Averages in the chat because he's a software engineer at Raytheon, right?
I think he still is, yeah.
That could be a crazy conversation.
Yeah, she's done a lot of stuff.
All right, let's watch that. Let's watch. Yeah.
By the population
Yep.
training?
Because that's gonna be a huge thing. Oh no. Actually. Sorry.
Jesus Christ.
This one. We should actually watch this.
4 years old.
We should honestly watch this whole thing because it specifically talks about. I think it talks about like different hegemonic powers who clashed. I actually read a whole book about this exact topic. This one's gonna be fire. We should watch this whole thing. Honestly, we should like let this play and not provide much commentary.
Gotta talk a little bit.
Yeah.
Let me
will.
thank you for the opportunity to talk about the biggest
So let's see if he
international
talks about
story
clashes of
your
rising
professional
powers
lifetime,
and
which is
different
also the most important international challenge the world will face for as far as the eye can see. The story, of course, is the rise of
are you
China.
bored? Are you honest?
Yeah.
Never before
Yeah,
have so
that-
many
that-
people
that implies
risen
that
so
you're-
far,
I woke
so
up at like
fast on so
4:30.
many different dimensions.
Why?
The
the
challenge
time I get up
is
in
the
the morning.
impact of China's rise. The discombobulation this will cause the United States and the international
This is
order,
fantastic right
of
here.
which
This
the
could be
U.S.
great.
has been the principal
You know,
architect
I
and
look-
guardian.
Without a shadow
The
of
past 100
like
years have been what
hyperbole,
historians now
I'm
call
so
an
excited for
American
this.
century. Americans have become accustomed to their place
What's
at the
Chat
top
saying?
of every pecking order.
Dark Sparrow's Bank said, "Keep it up, mate."
So
Dr.
the very
Drive.
idea of another country that could be as big and
Thank you,
strong
honestly.
as
That
the
means a
U.S.
lot
or
for
bigger
whoever it is.
strikes many Americans as an assault on who they are.
It's chat. Reveal yourself, Jack Sparrow. Who is it?
For perspective on what we're now seeing,
If
assuming
this is
it's-
just a
its
chatter, you're not going to
rivalry,
just give you.
I'm assuming
it's
it's
useful
Nelson.
to locate it on the larger map of history. The past 500 years have seen 16 cases in which a rising power threatened to
Yep, he's
displace a
gonna do
ruling
exactly
power.
what I talked about.
12 of those
You're gonna love this.
ended in war. So just November, we'll all pause to mark the 100th anniversary of the final day of a war that became so encompassing that it required historians to create an entirely new category, World War. So on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, the guns
See,
of
why they have
World
to
War
go
I
so
fell
like
silent,
meta and do all the
but 20
11
million
stuff?
individuals lay dead.
Nick Warner
I
says,
know
"No way
that this
we're
is a
excited for the
sophisticated
inevitable
audience,
war with
so
China."
you know about the rise of China. I'm going to
I'm not
focus
excited.
therefore
I'm-
You got
on
way
the
too
impact
giddy when you saw that
of China's
title.
rise.
No, it's just
You're like,
fascinating.
"Oh,
on the U.S.,
It's just fascinating.
on the
Nick,
international
you're gonna
order,
love this.
and on the prospects for war and peace. But having taught at Harvard over many years, I've learned that from time to time it's useful to take a short pause
I just saw your text,
just to
Nick
make sure
Hoff.
we're all on the same page. So the way I do this is I call a timeout. I give students a pop quiz, ungraded, of
Hold
course.
on.
So
Can we check who this guy is?
Who?
The speaker. Who else?
It says it right there.
Well, no,
Can you
I
read?
want to look up Graham Allison.
Yeah, that's how you spell his name. Oh, yep.
Yep. Well, this keyboard.
Oh, yeah.
At Harvard Kennedy School. What a surprise that this cutting edge researcher works at Harvard Kennedy School. I'm floored that he works there. Oh, that is just so surprising.
Controversy.
Controversy.
What did he do?
Controversy.
The editor made supposedly problematic edits based heavily on work of other scholars affiliated
Oh wait,
with
what's the Belfer Center? Is that a Harvard Kennedy School thing too? Yeah, if you can't tell, I want to go to Harvard Kennedy School.
Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs.
Oh, this is moving.
Harvard Kennedy, yeah,
Yeah,
research.
what a surprise that Harvard Kennedy School is doing cutting edge research. I'm shocked.
well, let's try this. The quiz, timeout, pop quiz. Question. 40 years ago, 1978, China sets
cannot
out
wait for this
on its
video.
march to the market. At that point, what percentage of China's 1 billion citizens were struggling to survive on less than $2 a day? Take a guess. 25%? 50? 75? 90? What do you think? 90.
And look at
9
his
out
deck
of
here.
every
This
10
is
on less than $2 a day.
What?
2018, 40
PowerPoint?
years later. What about the numbers? What's your bet?
you don't get excited about
Take a look.
PowerPoints, Gordon?
He hasn't really done anything that's blown me away yet in terms of PowerPoint.
That like
Fewer
animated
than
graphic.
one in 100 today.
Pyramid filling up. I mean,
And China's
I've
president
probably
promised
seen
that
better.
within the
You
next
just
3
tried to
years,
show me a video
those
of
last
40 minutes
tens
about like
of
Avatar
millions
CGI,
will
and
have
you're
been
expecting me
raised
to
up
get excited about a
above that
pyramid
threshold.
filling up in a PowerPoint. No.
So it's a miracle,
Wait, but
actually.
so
in
you're
our
saying
lifetime.
that James Cameron is cutting
Hard
edge?
to believe.
That's what I'm
but
hearing.
brute facts are even harder to ignore.
You just asked if I was excited about
nation
watching
that
a
didn't-
Oh,
pyramid
we
in a
gotta go
PowerPoint.
back because we missed all that. But go on.
Who's we? What?
We were talking over the video.
No, that did not excite me. Watching a pyramid fill up on a PowerPoint. If you were wondering.
And if you can't tell, cutting edge is my new buzzword, as well as leverage is also my new buzzword.
What about the numbers? What's your bet? Take a look. Fewer than 1 in 100 today. And China's president has promised that within the next 3 years, those last
Xi
tens of
Jinping,
millions
obviously.
will have been raised up above that threshold. So it's a miracle, actually, in our lifetime. Hard to believe, but brute facts are even
Honestly, in a dream scenario, we should get this guy on. In a dream scenario.
Yeah, hit him
harder
up.
to ignore. A nation that didn't even appear on any of the international league tables 25 years ago has soared.
This guy probably struggles with
Rival
checking
and in
email.
some areas
We can get him
surpassed
on.
the United
You
States.
tell me, this guy, I'm sure this guy has a great grasp on technology.
How old is
But
he?
I
How old
wonder-
is he?
Thus, the
But I
challenge-
wonder if he knows how to leverage AI to teach young people. I bet he doesn't.
No, he probably doesn't.
Yeah, so he should learn how to do that.
How old is this
And I
guy?
can teach
83,
him.
83 years old?
Ooh, we're running out of time to get him on. Oh, he focuses on, go back, on nuclear weapons
nuclear
and
weapons and terrorism.
Dude.
We can get him on
Human
here to talk
missile
about.
crisis? All right, can I do a sidebar on JFK? See,
We can
when
go-
I did my high school yearbook, I quoted a list of my idols, and they were, let me see, Disney, Buffett, Kennedy, Tom Brady, Kanye West, who else was it? Da Vinci, and Steve Jobs. And a lot of these people, like at a time in my life, I really disliked all these people for their bad things. But Kennedy is the one that sticks out. Like when I was in my Chomsky era, and I was like, "Oh, USA bad." Like JFK was a fantastic leader, and I heard this quote that actually RFK Jr. was on the Rogan podcast, and he said, when Jackie Kennedy was interviewing JFK and they met for the first time, she was like doing man on the street type of content in the 1960s, and she asked him, "Mr. Kennedy, what is your best quality?" And instead of they were expecting him to say like, "Oh, my like courage and like intelligence," and he said, "My curiosity." So I'm actually going to be using that in interviews going forward. Especially maybe at the Kennedy School, saying that quote. I think it's gonna be a big hit. But let's go back to the video.
She should have asked him about his faithfulness.
Yep. So let me reiterate. Harvard Kennedy School. Let's go.
that'll shape our world.
These days you will
A
remember
seemingly unstoppable
And my
rising
cousin
China,
Tess, who maybe will eventually
accelerating
watch
towards
this,
an apparently
probably one of the smartest
immovable
people I've ever
ruling
met.
US,
Well, I went to
one
Harvard.
course for
Harvard
what could be
undergrad, had a
the
perfect
grandest collision
GPA.
in history.
Went to Harvard Kennedy School for Public Policy, and now she's
help
going
us
to
get our
BU Law.
minds
So
around
one of the
this
smartest
challenge,
people I've ever met.
I'm going to
And
introduce
I hope
you
to get
to
her
a
on the
great
stream at some
thinker.
point to talk about her interests.
I'm
And
going
we
to
just
present
missed all that, so
unstoppable rising China, accelerating towards an apparently immovable ruling U.S., on course for what could be the grandest collision in history.
with
To help
climate
us
change
get
in
our
the
minds
picture.
around this challenge, I'm going to introduce you to a great thinker. I'm going to present a big idea, and I'm going to pose a most
I
consequential
think it's
question.
going to be an ancient Greek philosopher.
So the great thinker is Thucydides. Now, I know
shocked.
his name is a
Hold on,
mouthful,
the
and
audio
some
just
people have
went
trouble
weird.
pronouncing it.
I'm
So let's
kicking
do it
the-
1, 2, 3 together. Thucydides. One more time.
Thucydides.
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 So who was Thucydides?
Come on.
He was the father and founder of history.
He just asked
He wrote the
everybody to
first
say
ever history book.
Thucydides.
Did he actually?
It's titled The History.
Whoa, wait,
I've read that.
wait. You said what was?
I've read the history of the. That's one of my
Wait,
favorite
didn't you
books.
just say this was? Was this the book you brought up the other day?
No.
But he
I
just
forgot. I should have brought this one.
he
up.
just
That's one of
said
my favorite
he
books.
wrote the first history book. But you say your guy wrote the first history book?
Let's see when they lived. Thucydides. What year was he again? I don't remember.
Thucydides.
5th century
Come on, Gordian,
BC.
say it with us. Thucydides.
460 to. Let's see here. Athenian history. His history of the Peloponnesian War recounts the 5th century BC war between Sparta and Athens. Dubbed the father of scientific history.
And can we check the chat here after to see if anybody's saying anything?
Yeah. No, I've been watching it.
Yeah, we gotta get 2 monitors so we can see the chat. Obviously, that is. How much does a good monitor cost? Because that
the
honestly,
same
we
one.
should-
You just get the
we
same
should
one.
that
It's the
should be
cheapest
the
one.
like honestly we should get that like expeditiously.
Yeah. 484, 425. What? Herodotus was. Wait. 484. Yeah. Herodotus was.
All right, look up Herodotus' wiki.
Oh.
So Who was first?
The father of history. Him. He was born first.
All right,
44.
all right, so Graham Allison or whoever is wrong then. Wow.
Yeah, he is.
Wait, is this guy named Graham Allison? Is that
Well,
his name?
yeah, he's saying he's technically the father of scientific history, I guess. Yeah, even though it's not.
All right, let's go on.
But this book, phenomenal. Phenomenal
And you've
book.
read it, Gordy?
I have read it.
Peloponnesian
One of
War
my favorite books. Peloponnesian
About the
War
war in-
might be my favorite
in
book.
Greece 2,500 years
All
ago.
right, listen to this.
Oh, wait. Check in the chat. Someone said Wonga.
Hey, that's my friend from AmeriCorps. He's from Iowa. Yeah, Fred, keep commenting because
So,
we're
if
watching
nothing else today, you can
a
tweet your
insane
friends.
video.
I met a great thinker, and I can even pronounce his
Yeah,
name.
that might be our first
Thucydides.
AmeriCorps chatter. So meet all my friends
So
in the chat.
about this war
No,
between
it was,
that
And you've met him.
destroyed classical
He
Greece,
was at Barrett's.
Thucydides wrote
There was
famously.
who was here first?
Parents and
Leo.
students are getting bombarded with misinformation when it comes to college admissions advice.
We
was
honestly
the
could have
rise
watched that
of
ad. That might have been
Athens.
interesting.
and
No,
the
we just don't have
fear
the budget for your YouTube.
that this
thing.
instilled in Sparta
The
that
budget.
made the war inevitable. So the rise of one,
Oh,
the
no,
reaction of the other, create a toxic cocktail
Hour 43.
of pride,
And again, like on our first stream, we were like totally like trying to troubleshoot issues on the fly. And honestly, this stream has been seamless. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, we're not really doing much, so it's like not. You know, we just kind of throw a video on and sit back.
Yep. Okay. Yeah.
arrogance,
I mean, this is exactly.
paranoia
This is perfect.
that drug the both to war.
You got to read that book. That
Which
book's
brings me
phenomenal.
to the big idea. Thucydides' trap. Thucydides' trap is a term I
See if there's
coined
any
several
books
years
specifically
ago
on that.
to make vivid Thucydides' insight.
On Thucydides' trap.
Thucydides' trap is the dangerous dynamic that occurs when a rising power threatens to displace a ruling
You
power.
can just read.
Oh,
like
there's,
you read
a
that-
whole, there's a whole wiki. Honestly,
If
after
you read that
100
book,
years
that's,
ago.
that's like the
All right.
that's like the central pillar
after
of that
this,
book.
we should look up the wiki of Thucydides' trap.
Sure.
Okay.
Or China today and their impact on Sparta, or Great Britain 100 years ago, or the U.S. today. As Henry Kissinger has said,
Yo, Fred,
once
you
get
missed
this
my
idea,
drip when I
this
was wearing
concept
my
of Thucydides'
multiple
trap in your
Arctic.
head, it'll provide a lens for
like
helping
drip,
you look
in
through
this
the
box,
news and
drip,
noise of the day to
garments.
understand what's actually going on. So, to the most consequential question about our world today. Are we going to follow in the footsteps of history? Or can we, through a combination of imagination and common sense and courage, find a way for to manage this rivalry without a war nobody wants and everybody knows would be catastrophic? Give me 5 minutes to unpack this, and that later this afternoon, when the next news story pops up for you about China doing this or the U.S. reacting like that, you'll be able to have a better understanding of what's going on and even to explain it to your friends. So, as we saw with this flipping the pyramid of poverty, China has actually soared. It's meteoric. Former Czech President Václav Havel, I think, put it best.
Václav
He
Šmíl?
said, all this has happened
Who
so
is?
fast, we haven't yet had time to be astonished.
He wrote the book.
Who's favorite author?
Oh, yeah.
Who's
To
favorite author?
remind myself how astonished I should be, I occasionally look out the
Bill Gates.
window in my office in Cambridge at this bridge, which goes across the Charles River between the Kennedy School and Harvard Business School. In 2012,
Wait,
the
what
state of
school did you just
Massachusetts
say?
said they were going to renovate this bridge. It would take 2 years.
Massasoit.
In 2014, they
Hey,
said it
hey,
wasn't
that's not
finished. In
Yeah, it's
2015,
better school.
they said it would take 1 more year. In 2015, they said it's not finished. We're not going to tell you when it's going to be finished. Finally, last year, it was finished 3 times over budget. Now, compare this to a similar bridge
I'm actually
that I
this
drove
on,
across last
We
month in
should be well on to
Beijing.
talk about the
It's
dynamics
called the
of the
Sanyan Bridge.
Do you think B will ever be on
In
screen? That could be a little
2015, the
dangerous.
Chinese decided they
I'm
wanted
actually
to
gonna-
I think you
renovate
should come
that
on.
bridge. It actually
Yeah, he'll be
has
on.
twice as
I'm
many
gonna
lanes
promote
of
this
traffic.
on my Instagram.
How
I mean,
long
my,
did it take for
Twitter.
them to complete the project? 2015. What do you bet?
Teddy said, FYI, I can only do an audio call or
Take a
text
guess.
here because my camera is upside down.
Take a
Oh
look.
yeah, we should have Teddy on to talk about digital marketing. Teddy, you want to come on and talk about digital marketing in about 20 minutes? That's
Wait,
what
he's coming on?
He said he might want to come on, and we can talk
He
about.
said he can only do an audio call or text. Here.
That's fine.
The answer is
Teddy.
40
Yeah, you can just do
hours.
you can just do Discord audio.
Yeah, we'll do Discord audio, and we can do a powwow on how I can help build this brand. That'd be great. Yeah, I got multiple guests lined up who potentially want to come on, and like, this stream
Now, of
is
course, that
like
couldn't happen
honestly
in
has
New York.
gone perfect so far.
Okay, behind this speed and execution is a purpose-driven leader and a government that works. The most
Guess you can touch me when
ambitious
you want,
and
Mel.
most competent leader on the international stage today is
Let's
China's
finish
President
this video,
Xi
look at
Jinping.
the city's
And
trap
he's made no
wiki, and
secret
then we'll get Teddy
about
on.
what he wants. As he said when he became president 6 years ago, his goal is to make China great again. A banner he raised long before Donald Trump picked up a version of this. Okay. To that end, Xi Jinping has announced specific targets for specific dates.
The
2025,
yeah.
2035,
That's
2049.
just brilliant marketing.
2049.
By 2025, China means to
So
be
I'm
the
disappointed he didn't
dominant
talk more
power
about the other.
It is literally half
in
of
the major market.
No, but
in 10
he's gonna
leading
go more into China
technologies,
here, I bet. But he didn't
including
talk about like
driverless
the
cars,
the city's
robots,
trap
artificial
scenarios.
intelligence,
That's not-
quantum
Oh,
computing.
and what did you say about
By
AI?
20
He
market
said quantum
in
computing.
10 leading.
No,
By
No, no, no,
2025,
well, let's just see.
China means to be the dominant power in the major market in 10 leading technologies, including driverless cars, robots, artificial intelligence, quantum computing. By 2035, China means to be the innovation leader across all the advanced technologies. And by 2049, which is the 100th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic, China means to be unambiguously number one, including, as Xi Jinping, an army that he calls, quote, fight and win. So
And
this,
honestly, we should go. Remember, I was saying we should like play those advanced military simulations if they are publicly available to simulate war between U.S. and China on a future stream.
So the video.
Do you
Thanks for
want-
hold on. Apparently the video is overwhelmingly loud compared to us.
Oh, really? Damn it! That's gonna be annoying if that's true. Which,
Thank you for telling us that.
yeah. Thank you. Wait, Chris, could you still hear us, or was it like totally drowning it out?
Maybe that's better.
ambitious goals, but
Let me know if that's better.
obviously China's already well on its way to these objectives. And we should remember how fast our world is changing. 30 years ago, the World Wide Web had not yet even been invented. Who'll feel the impact of this rise of China most directly? Obviously, the current number one. As China gets bigger and stronger and richer, technologically more advanced, it'll inevitably bump up against American positions and prerogatives. Now, for red-blooded Americans, and especially for red-necked Americans like me, I'm from North Carolina, there's something wrong with this picture. Okay? The USA means number one. That's who we are. But again, to repeat, brute facts are hard to ignore. 4 years ago, Senator John McCain asked me to testify
What year
about
was this made?
to his
4 years
Senate,
ago.
Senate Armed Services Committee. And so I made for them a chart that you can see that said, compare the US and China to kids on opposite ends of a seesaw on a playground, each represented by the size of their economy. As late as 2004, China was just half our size.
Try to imagine that in one fell swoop, you lost all desire.
What was
By
that?
2014, GDP was equal to ours. And on the current trajectory, by 2024, it'll be half again larger. The consequences of this tectonic change will be felt everywhere. For example, in the current trade
Step up,
conflict,
isn't it?
China's already the number one trading partner of all the major,
Oh,
all the
Can I
major.
just see something in the audio? Yeah, take this for a
Which
second.
brings us back to our Greek historian. Harvard's Thucydides trap case file has reviewed the last 500 years of history and found 16 cases in which a rising power threatened to displace a ruling power. 12 of these ended in war.
Wow.
And the tragedy of this is
The last
that
two, no war,
very
though.
few of these did either of the protagonists want a war. Few of these wars were initiated by either the rising power or the ruling power. So how does this work? What happens is a third party's provocation forces one or the other to react.
We just got offered a great piece of content. I just went upstairs and talked to Nick Longo, one of the best educators, a future superintendent of some future school. He's going to send us his term paper on the one-child policy, and we're going to see how Nick Longo does at foreign policy analysis. How does that sound? So
Great.
we'll skip the city's trap, save that for another day. But let's finish
I would
this.
love a paper on anime volleyball after that as well.
And that sets in motion a spiral which drags the two somewhere they don't want to go. If that seems crazy, it is, but it's life. Remember World War I. The provocation in that case was the assassination of a second-level figure, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which then led the Austro-Hungarian emperor to issue an ultimatum to Serbia. They dragged in the various allies. Within 2 months, all of Europe was at war. So imagine Thucydides were watching Planet Earth today. What would he say?
Wow, what's the internet?
Yeah, he'd be like,
So you guys can access any piece of information in the entire world at your fingertips in a
I'd be
thing
clapping
this
for
size.
slaves to come over and help him out.
And then you can have ChatGPT tell you anything you want.
And he would scratch his
First of all, he
head
wouldn't know English.
and certainly say he couldn't think of a more colorful provocateur than North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Each seems determined to play his assigned part and is right on script. So finally, we conclude again with the most consequential question, the question that will have the gravest consequences for the rest of our lives.
It's gonna be fantastic, Nick.
Are Americans and Chinese going to let the forces of history drive us to a war that would be catastrophic for both? Or can we summon the imagination and courage to find a way to survive together? To share the leadership in the 21st century, or as Xi Jinping, to create a new form of great power relations.
If you keep
That's
kicking
the
that,
Bravo,
issue I've pursued
bravo.
passionately for the last 2 years. I've had the opportunity to talk and indeed to listen to leaders of all the relevant governments, Beijing, Washington, Seoul, Tokyo, to thought leaders across the spectrum of both the arts and business. I wish I had more to report. The good news is that leaders are increasingly aware of this Thucydidean dynamic. and the dangers
Thucydidean.
it poses.
You learned that word today, didn't you,
Nobody
Gordon?
has a feasible plan for
I
escaping
mean, I knew who
this condition.
Thucydides was.
So it's clear to me that we need some ideas outside the box of conventional.
Like
thinking.
leveraging Twitch and AI?
Read from another
Yeah, that's what he
page or another
I think
space,
that's what he should mean.
which is what brings me to TED today, and which brings me to a request. This audience includes many of the most creative minds on the planet who get up in the morning and think not only about how to manage the world we have, but how to create worlds that should be. So I'm hopeful that as this sinks in and as you reflect on it, some of you are going to have some bold ideas, actually some wild ideas, that when we find will make a difference in this space. And just to remind
I wonder
you,
if someone who knows how to do that.
this won't be the first time. Let me remind you what happened right after World War II. A remarkable group of Americans and Europeans and others, not just from government, but from the world of culture and business, engaged in a collective surge of imagination. And what they imagined and what they created was a new international order, the order that's allowed you and me to live our lives, all of our lives, without great power war, and with more prosperity than was ever seen before on the planet. So a remarkable story. Interestingly, every pillar of this project that produced these results, when first proposed, was rejected by the foreign policy establishment as naive or unrealistic. So my favorite is the Marshall Plan. After World War II, Americans felt exhausted. They had demobilized 10 million troops. They were focused on an urgent domestic agenda. But as people began to appreciate how devastated Europe was and how aggressive Soviet communism was, Americans eventually decided to tax themselves 1.5% of GDP every year for 4 years and send that money to Europe to help reconstruct these countries, including Germany and Italy, whose troops had just been killing Americans. Amazing. This also created the United Nations. Amazing. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the World Bank, NATO, all of these elements of an order for peace and prosperity. So, in a word, what we need to do is do it again. Okay? And I think now we need a surge of imagination, creativity, informed by history. For, as the philosopher Santayana reminded us, in the end, only those who refuse to study history are condemned to repeat it.
Burden, you see I was so excited about that video?
Well,